I don't believe in that frame of thinking because the second you start to think, am I doing it in the right direction or wrong direction? You start to slow yourself down and have doubts.
Nick Singh is a data influence powerhouse. With 180,000 followers on LinkedIn, over 40,000 copies sold of his best-selling book, Ace the Data Science Interview, Nick is the go-to voice in data career strategy.
A Twitter account made me quit my job. My first job out of school was on Facebook's growth engineering team.
What was it like the initial week right after you quit?
I thought I wanted to be the hardest working man in Virginia, and then I started getting lazy.
Nick's story isn't just about leaving a 9 to 5. It's about realizing he wasn't using his full potential at big tech.
I was probably in the bottom third of Meta, basically under the median, but not getting fired. I realized very quickly I need to find a way to capitalize on the fact that I've got a lot of interest and I've got a lot of strengths, which are not being used in the slightest at Meta.
How did you narrow down to the two ideas that you ended up with looking back?
The idea you have doesn't matter. It's really your commitment to that idea.
How did you exactly validate your idea on LinkedIn?
They're not just saying that to me, they're giving me their email address. It kind of started as an accident.
What did you have to sacrifice to build out DataLemur?
I sacrificed a lot.
What is up? Welcome back to The Time I Left My 9 to 5, a podcast where we uncover what really went on behind the scenes of people who took the leap, left behind stability, and built something of their own. Today on the podcast, we have Nick Singh, the best-selling author and founder of DataLemur, a platform that has helped over 200,000 people prepare for SQL and data science coding interviews. In this conversation, Nick got extremely real about feeling below average at his software engineering job at Meta. This is a story of how he eventually decided to carve out his own niche instead of following the traditional career playbook. While many of Nick's peers chased promotions or VC funding, Nick chose to write a book and build his own path, even when people doubted him. We talked about the real side of leaving a 9 to 5, the struggles, the uncertainty, but most importantly, the myth of overnight success. Nick opened up about questioning his career, tuning out outside noises, and staying action biased instead of overthinking his every move. Before we get into this episode, I'll be so grateful if you could subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, or rate the podcast if you're listening everywhere else. As you know, I'm still in the early days of growing this podcast, and your support, whether it's a like, comment, or rating, truly means the world in helping me bring more of these conversations to life. Thank you so much for joining me, Nick, on today's podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah, so I ask people at the beginning of our podcast episodes on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being completely regret and 0 being the best decision of your life. How much do you regret quitting your 9 to 5 at this point in time?
Maybe a 6. So basically, I don't regret it, but it's definitely not like a slam dunk, like every day is a battle. And I don't want to paint a rosy picture, but I'm probably better off that I quit than I didn't quit. But it took me 4 years. I quit 4 years ago. So, that number 4 years in, only now I'm like, okay, great. This was a total mistake. So it takes a long time.
I love your honesty because sometimes we see on social media like this rosy picture painted of entrepreneur life, but it's not always like that. So I'm really excited to dive into your story and give the listener here today an overview of what it's actually like behind the scenes. Can you give us a quick overview of your journey, how you went from, studying at the University of Virginia to working as a growth engineer at Facebook, at SafeGraph, and then eventually leaving your job to writing a book and ultimately founding DataLemur?
Absolutely. So in college, I loved math, coding, and business. So that's what led me to study systems engineering, which is kind of like operations research or industrial engineering at other schools. My first job out of school was on Facebook's growth engineering team, which was all about using data to grow the consumer product and retain more users. Within the growth engineering division, I was actually on the new person experience team, where I'd look at the data about the new user onboarding funnel and try to figure out how do we retain new users longer and how do we get them to keep coming to Facebook? Because again, if your user onboarding isn't clear for an app, you'll lose a lot of the people you acquire right in the first few days or in the first few weeks. And compared to YouTube, where you sign in new and you have a bajillion videos, when you join Facebook as a new user, you have no friends, no birthdays, no one to message, your feed's empty. So it's a very tricky product problem to get people to retain on a social network when they have no friends, no messaging, nothing. So that's kind of what I worked on, using data and A/B testing to kind of optimize that. Then I worked at geospatial startup geospatial analytics startup SafeGraph, which took data about how people visited stores and where they went in the physical world and kind of packaged that up in a neat way and sold those data sets to hedge funds and retailers and ad tech companies. And that was during COVID. I quit, wrote the book because when I was at SafeGraph, I was getting a lot of traction on my social media posts. So during COVID, I quit, wrote the book, aced the data science interview, and then a year after that, started DataLemur. And I'm happy to dive into that. I know that's quite a lot of different steps, but happy to dig in.
Yeah, thank you for the quick overview. I do want to start our conversation with the big pivotal moment where you realized you had to leave your 9 to 5. I was just wondering, was there like a defining moment you knew, or was it more a series of events?
It was both sudden and not so sudden. When I was at SafeGraph, there was this Twitter account. Like a Twitter account made me quit my job, to be honest. A Twitter account. His name was Lindy Man, and he'd keep describing that there's two types of people in the world: 4HLs and 12HLs. 4HL means 4 hour life. They live their life from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. All the other hours, they're either sleeping, they're eating, or they're at work. Their entire life is basically 4 hours. And he said people who live in the 4HL, they do everything differently than the 12HLs. The 12HL is a person who has 12 hours of free time every day. From 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., that's when they live their life. Sure, they're sleeping, sure, they're eating, but they live a very different life. They have very different risk tolerance. They have very different attitudes toward work-life balance. And by the way, I don't mean those 12 hours are all free time. It's just sort of like you pick what you want to do and you have control over it and you live your life in those 12 hours. So I saw that Twitter account and I saw this concept and it was kind of grinding my gears that like, dude, I want to be in the 12HL, but I'm in the 4HL. COVID happened when I was at Safe. My lease was up June 2020. Okay. I tried to renew it. My roommates, they didn't want to renew it. We all went back. I moved back home with my parents in June 2020. So now suddenly I have a great job that's I'm doing well in, that's been really fulfilling, really exciting. But it hit me, wow, I have no rent to make. I have no expenses. I live at home. I'm eating my mom's Indian food. I have no clubs to go to, no music festivals. Nothing is happening. There's no way to spend my money. I don't even have rent to make. Yet I have all this money coming in. This is the perfect time, the least risky time for me to make my pivot. So in that moment when I knew my lease renewal was like not going to happen, it kind of clicked in my brain, yo, this is my chance to be in the 12HL. This is my chance to kind of break away and pay my own path. And I also had negative self-talk that said, I'm not going to use the curse words, but hey, if you don't quit right now, you're not a man. If you don't quit right now, you'll never quit because responsibilities will grow. COVID will be over. You'll have to get a new lease. You might get a mortgage. You might get wifed up. Like, if you don't quit right now, you're never going to quit. And that kind of self-talk made me be like, yo, I got to do this. Otherwise, I can't look at myself in the mirror correctly if I don't quit right now. Because this is the best time in the world to quit when there's nothing to spend money on. I have no financial obligations. And this is the youngest I'll ever be. So it was that kind of moment in June 2020 that I quit.
Yeah, I definitely think timing is everything. It's also when I left my job, you have to think about a lot of factors, right? So there is financial, like you talk about, but there's also other responsibilities in your life and other factors. So I want to get the timing of the sequence of events, right? So when you quit in June 2020, did you already start posting on LinkedIn and did you already know what you were going to do?
Yes. So I had been posting on LinkedIn for maybe 6, 7, 8 months before that moment. And I quickly skyrocketed to about 40,000 LinkedIn followers. So that first gave me some little bit of assurance that, wow, I'm onto something. Now, I want to make something clear. Actually, I quit my job in July of 2020. I mean to say when June 2020 happened and my lease didn't renew, I was like, great, I need to put in my 2 weeks notice. Let me just time it right with work. But mentally, I knew 1 month before I actually put in my notice, like after this project is done, I'm out of here. So that's why I kind of say I quit in June 2020. I didn't actually quit, but it was 1 month later. But in my head, it clicked like, I'm not renewing the lease. I'm at home for a long time. I'm not even going to try to come to SF. I'm not going to try to make money. Okay. So you also asked, did I know what I was going to do in June of 2020? My buddy, Kevin Huo, who's my co-author, who helped, we wrote Ace the Data Science Interview together. He's an ex-Facebook data scientist. He was also a quant at a hedge fund and he interned at Bloomberg. So he's quite a technical guy. He's also my buddy from high school. He had a small business already where he had this newsletter that was sending out data science interview questions, and you could pay a little bit extra to upgrade that into to get the solutions. So he already was around this data science interview prep idea. I'd done some data ML work, data engineering work at Google as an internship, so I kind of knew the space. And then I also had the audience. So we kind of teamed up around that time to work on it. And when COVID came, I knew that like it was time to pull the trigger. But I want to make clear that it's a little bit fuzzy 4 years later, like what the ordering was. But I also had this other like B2B SaaS idea mulling in my head in that April, May, June. So I knew even if things don't work out with my buddy, because I didn't quit to be like, bro, I'm going to make an empire around interview prep. I just was like, let me quit and then figure it out. So I had some ideas, I had some traction, I had some confidence, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, bro, when I quit, I was for sure knowing that 4 more years I'm going to be working on this data science interview prep thing. It was sort of like a small thing, writing the book, which I thought would be small. It turned out to be much bigger than I thought. But I also had this other startup idea. So I just want to be clear that the ideas were more fluid, but I knew that it didn't matter what idea I did. I knew that the timing was perfect and this is the time to commit.
What was it like a couple of weeks or like the initial week right after you quit? What did you do?
I thought I wanted to be the hardest working man in Virginia. I was like, bro, I'm going to bring that Bay Area mindset. I'm going to be here. I'm going to grind. I'm on my own. And I worked long hours for like a week or two or three. And then I started getting lazy and then life happened. So, what were those first few weeks like? It was a lot of calls of people being like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? That's so cool. It was also a lot of like working with Kevin, and it was also a little bit of validating my other idea. Cause again, I didn't know that a book could become a business. I just thought that that would be something cool to do. So it was definitely like a hodgepodge of meetings, a hodgepodge of work, and like going in different directions. But I want to like leave your viewers with this kind of like message of like, yes, I was going in a lot of different directions, but I was at least still trying things and figuring it out. Half the people just like never pull the trigger to like figure things out. They just stay in la la land. So it was kind of chaotic and I didn't exactly know what I was doing. And I also thought I could write the book in 3 months. That was not true. It took a whole year. But I also thought like, oh yeah, let me write the book on the side in 3 months while also doing the startup idea. So it was kind of a hodgepodge of ideas, to be honest. And it was a mess, but yeah, it was just figuring out what I need to do. And also, I tried to validate a little bit more about the book itself. And we can talk about idea validation in a bit if you want.
I couldn't agree more on what you said about people not pulling the trigger and they're saying they want to do so many things but never actually do it.
Yeah.
So when I know when people quit their job, you have this world of possibilities of things that you can do. You can literally do anything in the world.
Yeah.
So how did you narrow down to the two ideas that you ended up with looking back?
So I'm Indian. And in very traditional Indian culture, they have arranged marriages. Often these arranged marriages, people just don't get divorced. Okay. And now there's a lot of multifaceted things there. But there's this kind of idea of like, hey, if you want to make a marriage work and both people want to make a marriage work, they can kind of make the marriage work, even if they don't know the other person that well and they didn't date for 5 years. Like you can make a marriage work and have kids. Like my parents had an arranged marriage, and thousands of Indian Americans here in America had arranged marriages, and their kids have gone on to be successful. And the parents usually haven't gotten divorced. Okay. So why am I talking about this? What I'm trying to say is I'm also a believer a little bit of like the idea you have doesn't matter. It's really your commitment to that idea because in this universe, there's a bajillion ideas and you can make a killing pouring concrete, cutting grass. Like my plumber probably makes more money on their like fixing something in an hour than I do when I coach SQL, which is kind of crazy because I'm kind of good at SQL. And you wouldn't really think of your plumber as such a high value skill, but I mean to just say, if you commit to entrepreneurship and doing your own thing, it matters less the idea you have. So this is just a big rant on how do you know what you wanted to work on? I had a few ideas, but I knew that it didn't really even matter because I'd find a way to make it work. And if it didn't work after 6 months, I could always switch. And I think there's too many people who get really hung on what domain they're in, and then they're not even in a domain. So I have friends who will spend 2 months in healthcare and be like, "Bro, healthcare is too hard. Let me do ad tech." They're like, "Wait, ad tech's really hard. Google and Facebook run everything." In healthcare, they say, wait, no hospital wants to talk to me because there's a bajillion compliance things. I can't even make an MVP. And they jump to e-commerce and they're like, wait, e-commerce is saturated. So I'm a believer of like, bro, if you just were like, yeah, I love healthcare, I'm just going to do healthcare for 5 years, you're probably better off using not your brain and just doing healthcare for 5 years than trying to be really smart and like jumping 50 times because you're going to just demoralize yourself jumping from healthcare to ad tech to e-commerce to drop shipping. It's just too much. So that's kind of my message there about like, I had some hunches on the idea I wanted to do, and I can delve more into how I picked those ideas, but I also knew like it didn't really matter because I'd figure out a way to make it work.
I love that. That leads me to the next question, which is about pivoting.
Yeah.
Because going fast in the wrong direction is less ideal than going slower in the right direction. How do you know if something works? At which point do you stop and pivot to other ideas?
So I actually disagree with what you're saying. So the reason I disagree with it is yes, on paper, it's worse to go really fast in the wrong direction. But what I'm trying to explain to you is there's money even in the wrong direction, is what I'm trying to say. As long as you use a little bit of brain power, right? So even someone told me, Nick, you should be doing AI stuff. Why would you write a book? Right? Book is the wrong direction. Everyone pirates books. No one reads books. It's 2024. Why would anyone want to write a book? But I had this thing like, bro, even on a book, I think I could make money because if I moved quickly in the wrong direction, everyone else is doing social media, video courses, masterminds. Nobody is writing a book saying, I'm going to make money off a book, right? So this is exactly what I'm trying to tell you. If I sit there and say, I'm going to write a best-selling book and I actually move fast towards that goal and I move in a very strong, like with all my life force towards that goal, I can still do better than my friends who are like, bro, who reads books and they pivot between 19 chat GPT wrapper ideas versus we have a best-selling book. And it's not a surprise. We're not surprised that it's a best-selling book. It's because like the book's actually really good and they spent a whole year working on it. Whereas most other people spend 1 month to make a LinkedIn learning course, or they spend 2 weeks to make their own little course on Kajabi or Teachable. But I said 1 year of my full-time life. But now that it's done, we've sold 40,000 copies and it's going to continue to sell. So what I mean to say is, yes, someone might still say, no, Nick, you're stupid. You wrote a book. Books are less and less important year by year, but I might have ran in the wrong direction, right? Someone's probably telling me, bro, why are you trying to even teach people data science? All the money, if you're good at data science and AI, make your chat GPT wrapper today in 2024, work on AI agents. And I say, okay, great. You work on the agent. I'm just going to keep building my little data science interview niche and keep going. And you have fun with Y Combinator and fundraising and this and networking and this. And I'll just sit in my little room, continue to improve on how I help people with their interview skills, which might be the wrong direction because no YC partner is saying, no, Nick, you're doing amazing work. I'm not building an AI agent. I'm not on trend. ChatGPT might take my job, right? I don't know if SQL is being written by ChatGPT these days, right? So why am I in the business of teaching SQL? I might be headed in the wrong direction, but my revenue grows month after month. My number of users on DataLemur, we recently crossed 200,000 users. It's growing month over month. So even if SQL is on its way out and people don't need SQL as much 10 years from now, someone will still need SQL, and I'm getting better month after month at teaching SQL, and we'll see what happens in 10 years. But I think SQL will still be around in 10 years. And even if I'm going in the wrong direction off theme, I think I can still build a good business and help tons of people with their SQL knowledge.
I love that. From where I'm sitting, I think your success has a lot of determination behind it and just putting your blinder on and not caring about what other people are saying. You touched a little bit about you being in your room writing a book, whereas other people doing all of these flashy, cool things.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about how you're finding your niche. So I read your newsletter.
Mhm.
Very good, by the way. If anybody's not following Nick's newsletter, he's an excellent writer. In one of your newsletter issues, you mentioned Peter Thiel's competition for
Yeah.
loser philosophy. Can you elaborate a bit more on that and how this idea influenced your personal pivot away and towards creating your own niche?
For sure. So I actually first started to realize this when I worked at Meta or Facebook back in the day. This was 2017 before they were branded as Meta. I realized I was good at data, I was good at coding, but I was definitely not, like, the best. I was probably in the bottom third of Meta, which is still, in a global scale, quite good, technically, and bottom third, I'm not trying to say I'm in the bottom 5th or 6th where it's like you're gonna get fired because they let go of, let's say, the bottom 10%. So I wasn't in the bottom 10%, but I was maybe, like, right at that 1/3 mark, 33rd percentile. Basically, under the median, but not getting fired. That's not a fun place to be for someone who's at Meta and trying to be the best. Because I got to Meta by being really good, right? So it was quite a humbling experience. So I realized when I was on my team, okay, great. I'm working tons of hours and I'm not even the median performer. I'm worse than the median, even though I'm putting in 50, 60 hours a week. This is not going to be sustainable for me because it is not fun. So I knew either I should switch to an easier company than Meta, because Meta, compared to all the other fangs, they're very intense, way more intense than Google, way more intense than Microsoft. So I knew like if I switched to a different company, things might get easier. But I also had this hunch when I would watch my coworkers think about product, think about public speaking, think about writing, that I realized I've got a lot of skills that are not being used at Meta. As an individual contributor, being able to talk well, write well has literally no impact on your job because it's about how much data can you analyze, how many writes of code do you push to production, right? It doesn't matter if you're good at marketing or branding or product or design, it literally did not matter. So I realized very quickly, shit, I need to find a way to capitalize on the fact that I've got a lot of interests and I've got a lot of strengths, which are not being used in the slightest at Meta. And to be honest, at any big company. Because when you're an individual early in your career, working a technical job, you're just not going to have to worry about these things, especially at a big company. So that's kind of what taught me that, shoot, let me see if I can try to make my own niche that combines being very good technically, sure, not the world's best, but very good, with my passion for marketing, design, branding, public speaking. And what do you know? 5 years later, what do? I help people technically through written mediums, through podcasts, through talking, through video courses. And the reason I do well is not just that my content's good, it's because it's also marketed well, because I like marketing. I like thinking about how do I get the word out there. So that's what I mean by creating your own niche and then assessing your strengths and weaknesses. Peter Thiel's advice of like building your own niche, own monopoly is kind of what inspired me to break away from the status quo of everyone just trying to chase that next promotion at Meta and try to pave my own path where I get to use all these different skills. And that's kind of what led me to even quit Meta and join a startup, because at least at the startup, I got to wear multiple hats.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being very transparent and vulnerable on feeling average, which is, I think, what a lot of people feel in like big tech, where everybody around you is super smart.
Yeah. And just to be honest, I wasn't even average. I had to work hard and I wasn't even the median employee. And that sucked. I wasn't even average, you know.
So you worked 60 hours a week at
Mhm.
Meta back then. How many hours a week do you work now?
I don't know, like 30, maybe 20, sometimes 40. This is where the 4HL and 12HL starts to come up. Lindy Mann is a modern day philosopher. He's a Twitter account based on a lot of the writings and works of Nassim Taleb, who wrote the book Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, and Fooled by Randomness. He's quite a famous writer with famous books, and he's like a PhD in like stats and math, and then he worked in Wall Street. So a lot of your data audience, Maggie, might also enjoy his writing and his work because it's very numerical stats, but real world too. Anyways, Lindy Mann talks about 4HL versus 12HL. So now that I'm in the 12HL, I can't even count the number of hours worked because it doesn't feel like work for me. It's just like my life. Like me doing a podcast with you, is that work? Or do I just love it? Like I don't count this as working. I didn't work this morning. I helped someone with SQL, but I just had fun with it. Again, it didn't really feel like work. So this is why I can't even count how many hours I work, because that's just my life. And this is why when Bezos talks about like he's not a fan of work-life balance, he's a fan of work-life integration. All the 12HL people who are VCs, entrepreneurs are like, yup, Bezos, you're right. And then all the people in the 4HL who work a 9 to 5 job, they're like, what the hell are you talking about, Bezos? Like, I need to have hobbies. I need to have free time. And like, for me, I don't have free time. I don't really have hobbies. Like, this is my hobby. This is what I love to do. So this is why I can't even answer like, how many hours do I work? I just do what comes in front of me. And yeah.
I love that for you. In order for your business to run super smoothly and be as successful as it is now, I do know that you also talked about like the barbell strategy where 80 to 90% of your time is spent on safe bets, like working a day job, and 10 to 20% is spent on things that are a little bit more risky, but you can win big.
Yep.
So, how do you prioritize the high upside and low downside activities right now to avoid burnout, but also to make sure that your business is functioning the best it could?
Perfect. So let me talk about barbell for a second. Barbell strategy is from Nassim Taleb in his book Anti-Fragile. He talks about it. And he basically just talks about optimally, you do 80, 90% safe things, and then your 10% where you risk it all. You go big. So that if it works out, great, it changes your life. So for me, when I was at SafeGraph, my 80, 90% of being safe was working at SafeGraph, a steady job at a good company. And that 10, 20% of me risking it was writing on LinkedIn, which doesn't have a clear payoff, right? You just write on LinkedIn, no one's paying you, there's no monetization on LinkedIn. But if my writing picks up, then maybe I have a chance to become a famous writer, a famous author, a famous podcaster, a thought leader, a VC. So it didn't have any clear payoff because that's why it's risky, right? It's not the same as consulting where someone's giving you money per hour worked. I was literally working for free by writing content week after week for many, many months. But the reward was, oh, shoot, I'm a good writer. Maybe I can write a book. And that changed everything. So this is how we think about the barbell strategy. Today, I don't really use the barbell strategy in my day-to-day work, but the barbell strategy is there in the sense that say whatever money I save, I don't put into crypto. I have zero crypto assets. Okay. I don't do any day trading. I don't have a Robinhood account. I don't do any day trading. All of it goes into the S&P 500 and some of it goes into the cash. Okay. So you won't hear me talk about drop shipping or real estate or anything else. So that's kind of the barbell strategy that my time is either spent working on my data science interview business or my money and time and effort goes into something very stable, which basically takes no effort. That's kind of how I do barbell. So you will never hear me talk about rental or Airbnb arbitrage. I'm not trying to do anything new. I'm just trying to help data people. So that's kind of how I see the barbell today, which is I take no risks with my money except for my business, which is a big risk, but with big payoff.
So, for someone who is contemplating about quitting their job,
Yep.
for them, the barbell that you would recommend would be focusing on your 9 to 5 for 80, 90%, and then the other 10, 20, venture out, try your passion project before you leave 9 to 5.
Exactly. Exactly. And that passion project, that 10, 20%, don't trade your time for money. As in, don't if your day job is writing SQL all day long, don't make your 10 to 20% time be writing SQL. Make it something bolder or bigger. Or if it's SQL because you want to start your own data engineering consulting business, that's fine. But basically, don't in that last 10 to 20% do the same thing that you're doing anyways in your day job. To say, oh, wow, instead of bringing 100K this year, I brought in 110K by doing 10K worth of SQL. It should be, I brought in 100K, but that last 10% of time, I brought in nothing because I was learning marketing. So that 4 years from now, you're this weirdo who's so good at SQL, but you're also a world-class marketer. And then suddenly you launch a SQL course, which is not only very good technically, but the best marketed in the world. That's what I mean by barbell, right? Spend that
Yeah.
time doing sales, marketing, or do something bigger and bolder that you wouldn't normally do so that if it works, it takes off like crazy and you shift your whole path.
100%. When you validated your idea of the book using LinkedIn, and LinkedIn in 2020 was nothing like LinkedIn today, it was more like for people to announce, hey, I got this job, I got this
Mhm.
promotion. So, how did you get started there, and how did you exactly validate your idea on LinkedIn?
It kind of started as an accident, honestly, Maggie. I just started posting one or two things and I was like, wait a second, why did I get like 1,000 likes and like 5,000, like 50,000 views on this post that took me like 5 minutes, right? And I'm a numbers oriented person. That's why I'm in data science. That's why I'm growth. That's why. So I was just like, dude, I don't know what the hell's happening. I'm not going to make money off of this, but like 50,000 people seeing my work for very little effort, that seems really cool. So I just kept doing it. Now, in terms of validating the book as a concept, what we did, this doesn't work as well today in 2024. But what we did back then was we said, hey, we're going to come out with 30 SQL interview questions or 30 stats interview questions. If you want that list, give me your email. I'll send you that question list along with the solution. So that built up hype. And then suddenly we had lots of people give me their email address. And that helped me validate, oh, shoot, why are thousands of people saying they want to see stats interview questions? Mind you, back in 2020, when I'm doing this, what had all the mind share? Sites like LeetCode and HackerRank and Python's data structure and algorithm questions had all the mind share. No one was talking about data interviews. No one was talking about stats and ML interviews. No one was talking about product sense. It was just all data structure and algorithms had all the mind share. So this is how we validated like, whoa, people want to cover other types of interview concepts. And they're not just saying that to me, they're giving me their email address. And then when we'd release a new guide, so every few weeks we released a guide, and we'd also email everyone who had come from the weeks prior. So when we had the ML guide, we wrote to all the stats people, hey, stats folks, if you want to see this ML guide we just got, we have your email. Here's the ML guide. And like 50% of them clicked that link. Okay, maybe not 50%. Sorry, 50% of people open that email and like 10% of people click that link. And I was like, oh my goodness. Not only are people giving me emails for the ML guide, all the people who are interested in stats, they're also interested in ML. Great. That's 2 of my 10 chapters in the book. And we did that for 4 more chapters. So suddenly I had the core of like 6 out of 10 chapters of the book already done, pre-validated. And it wasn't neatly packaged. And yes, there were typos and errors, and it's not fully like what the book came into. But it was like, wow, like 50% of the book is sort of loosely done with like people who are excited about it. I think we can make a real business out of this. So that's how we did that validation via LinkedIn.
Thank you for sharing that story. What was your thought process like? So I know it's scary for some people writing on LinkedIn. For example, what if my coworker sees this? And for your book, when you're sharing little snippets of it, what if somebody copies my idea? So there's so many what ifs and scary thoughts. Was any of these ever occur to you, and how did you address them?
No thoughts, just vibes. That's a
Love
catchphrase.
that.
Right? No thoughts, just vibes. If you overanalyze and you overthink, you often end up not taking action. So I just didn't overthink it. And this is why in the beginning of our podcast, I disagreed with you when you were saying it's not good to go in the wrong direction very quickly. And I was like, no, no, no. I don't believe in that frame of thinking, because the second you start to think, if I'm doing it in the right direction or wrong direction, you start to slow yourself down and have doubts, and you start to overanalyze things. So I'm in a team of like no thoughts, just vibes, just ship it, send it, move on. So no, I didn't really worry about that too much about, did people think I was weird? Again, I'm validating these ideas in like May, June, and July of 2020 when I'm already, my head's in the space of like, oh, I'm leaving my job. So it didn't really bother me. And second, it's like, dude, even if someone thinks I'm weird, I'm trying to make a living out of this. So I'm not going to let some random Joe Schmo think I'm weird stop me from writing a best selling book. Right? Like that's, and people still think I'm weird, by the way. And by the way, I did get made fun of a ton for writing on LinkedIn. In the beginning, like I would hear from like friends of friends and stuff, or like people would be like, oh, why does this 25-year-old think he's so good? Or why does this guy who is quite average at Meta think he's like God's greatest gift on interviewing and job searching and career advice? I would hear that and I'd say, okay, awesome. But 4 years later, I'm doing my own thing and they're still working their jobs, and that's great for them. And I'm happy where I'm at. So you got to risk it for the biscuit, and, you know, just send it.
That is really empowering to hear. So you would say doing something doesn't matter, whatever you do is better than thinking and keeping thoughts in your head and keep analyzing.
Exactly. Yeah. And doing something and sticking to it. So if you're somewhat good at writing or you love writing, start writing some stuff on Substack and see where it takes you. Because if you write consistently good quality content about data engineering on your newsletter once a week for 52 weeks, I guarantee you at the end of 52 weeks, your writing has improved. Some people know you. You start putting on Hacker News or Product Hunt, or it goes viral. And suddenly you'll have some people talking to you to say, hey, do you offer consulting? Do you offer coaching? So most people just try to think too much. Should I have a coaching model or consulting model? Should I do this, this, this? How will I raise YC funding? And this, most people won't write a newsletter for 52 weeks. So same way, even before I knew about entrepreneurship or any of this stuff, I was writing on LinkedIn. So whether it's writing something, and by the way, none of this has to be content creation. If you are a passionate technical person, you just like building apps, let's go launch 12 apps in 12 months, or 12 ChatGPT wrappers in 12 months. And don't worry about marketing. Don't worry about monetization. Just make the apps, launch them, and see what happens. And by your 12th app, you'll notice which one took off more. You'll be much faster at making these ChatGPT wrappers. And, throw some Stripe monetization in there, you might collect some, pre-sales or something like that, and then suddenly you have something validated. So it's not all about content, by the way. I just want to mean whatever you're good at, like if you're a good builder, just start putting stuff out there.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect transition point to talk more about your latest adventure, DataLemur. So you founded DataLemur 2 years after your book.
Yeah.
And we know you can only take on so much on your plate. So what inspired you and what did you have to sacrifice in order to have more capacity to build out DataLemur?
Yeah, totally. And I love that you brought up sacrifice because this is very much sacrifice. I sacrificed a lot. So first off, actually, the book came out, and a year later we started working on DataLemur. So why did we start working on DataLemur after 1 year? Because one of the feedbacks we kept getting about our book, Ace to Data Science Interview, was we love the SQL chapter, but reading and writing SQL, that doesn't sound great. I want to practice that online, right? Like I want to actually run the SQL code. They're like, do you have a sandbox? Do you have an environment? At that same time, when we went online, people complained a ton about HackerRank and their SQL questions, their quality. Even today, there's no like discussion board solutions or hints for HackerRank problems. And then leak code is kind of a hot mess. They're very good for data structure and algorithms questions. They're very good for software engineers, but leak code is not built for data scientists or data analysts. And I know you might be thinking like, wait, Nick, what the hell? But 200,000 users later, we've found that over and over again that why our platform is able to exceed leak code. But we had these hunches in the beginning, like something is missing. So that's what kind of led me to start working on DataLemur to see a gap in the market. Plus, users kept telling me I want to run SQL online and practice this. So what did I have to give up to do this? There was a world in which I wrote the book, had passive income, and got a job and just made double the money, right? You wrote the book, it sold well. It's 2023, COVID's over. Let's go be a grown up, get a real job. I didn't do that. So I sacrificed real money and real income. I did not contribute to my retirement account for 2020, 2021, or 2022. So for 3 years, I didn't save money and I didn't put any money into my retirement, no 401k, nothing. Meanwhile, all my friends at Meta and this, their stocks are going crazy, jobs are booming, COVID, zero interest rate phenomena. Everyone is raising money from Y Combinator. Here I am sitting at home just working on my thing. I also took all the profits from the book and put them into DataLemur. So even when I started making money and I could have just moved on and gotten that money, I didn't take that money. I reinvested it into DataLemur. So that's what I sacrificed: time and money and optionality, because that would have been a really great point to like go back to be a career or do this or do that. And I said, no, I'm going to double down. And I could have also switched into AI or something else or made a video course. I said, nope, I'm going to keep doubling down on data science interview prep and SQL interview prep. So that's what I had to give up. And again, I might be going the wrong direction. I am doing well. DataLemur is doing well, but maybe I would have done 10 times better if I'd raised funding in 2023 in the zero interest rate phenomena, or maybe I've done 10 times better getting a cushy overpaid job at a hyper growth company in 2023. So who knows what would have happened? But again, I put my blinders on. Who cares? I like what I'm doing with DataLemur. It's helping 200,000 people and I make some money with it. So I'm happy to keep going.
Looking back, is that something that you would do again? What are the things that you wish you would have known before starting all of this?
What I wish I would have known before starting all of this is to move faster. I definitely got lazy at different points of time, and that's not good. It's sometimes sad that I had a better work ethic at Facebook working for Zuck than I did for myself. Now, it makes sense at Meta, a lot of promotions and incentives and your boss yelling at you. I'm not really yelling, but you know what I mean. Like there's a lot more pressure than when you work for yourself and deadlines are fluid. So I wish I'd figured out how to stay better on task or deadline. And I'm just as a person not very good at that. I'll be honest. I'm just not very good to sticking at deadlines. So I wish I could just be better at that. Most recently, I joined a co-working space where I go 2 or 3 times a week. And that's only something I started doing like 4 years into my solo entrepreneurship journey. Maybe I could have started going to an office or doing something like that a year or two ago to have better structure and just being a little bit more formal about it. So that's something I wish I had done better. Besides that, honestly, not too many regrets besides just moving faster would have been the main one. And yeah, not too many regrets.
I'm actually curious about this for myself as well. How do you find when you go into a co-working space? Is it just more structure? Is it the people around you who are going at the same speed doing their own things?
Yeah. It's just the idea that I feel foolish to, like, go on social media or something like that when I'm at a co-working spot versus when I'm working from my own bedroom. It is so easy to take a nap, watch a movie, sleep in. So there's something about just, like, getting dressed, putting on my shoes, going to the co-working spot, and then once I'm there, I can't give up or, like, go back home versus in my bed, I can be like, "Ah, it's 9 o'clock. Let me work at 10, let me work at noon," right? Versus when I'm at the co-working spot, it's kinda like, "Bro, if I wasn't going to work, I'm not gonna, like, open up Netflix in the office." You know what I mean? Like, it's in a co-working spot, like, there's nothing I can't nap, there's nowhere to nap. I can't really do a call, like, there's nothing to do. I can't, like, chit chat or anything, so I just kinda sit there and I'm forced to work. So that's kind of what's been helping me a little bit. And I only do that 2 or 3 days a week because the other days I still like to sleep in a little bit and be a little bit lazy or go in deep work mode. But there's just something good about just, like, when I go to an office, I know from 9 to 5, I have to somewhat lock in, and I'll never put Netflix, and I'll never fall asleep when I'm at the office.
Yeah, that makes sense. To wrap everything up, for listeners with us today who might be considering leaving their stable job to pursue a passion project or start their own business, what is the number one advice you would give them?
So, save aggressively while you're in that job, and then 2, once you have enough for, like, a year and a half, maybe 2 years of savings, go do your own thing. Do not wait for funding. Too many people in tech get so hung up on VC funding, Y Combinator. And by the way, you understand Y Combinator is a business which markets itself. It's not necessarily telling you the most accurate advice to be successful in business. It's giving you advice on how to be a great venture backed startup aiming for $1 billion outcome, which is what YC specializes in. So they kind of don't talk about being a plumber. They don't talk about writing a book. They don't talk about here's how to launch a video course. All their ideas and advice, which has been marketed very well, is targeted at this one group of people who are trying to make $1 billion company. Most people in the real world who get rich are not trying to build billion-dollar companies. So this is why I just think like saving money and go doing your own thing can be better. And sometimes you can overlearn if you listen to too much Y Combinator, you listen to too many VC podcasts and all in and everything. You get confused and you just never take action because they make it much more complicated than it needs to be. That's my first main point. Second is don't over intellectualize what you're doing, right? I wrote a book. That's it. There's no moat. There's no VC fundraising. There's no 18-year plan. I mean, the 18-year plan is just keep helping data people with their interviews. That's it. There's no moat. You could do it too, Maggie. Like you literally could start tomorrow. You could compete with me. I don't care, right? There's no moat. There's no strategic vision. There's no acquisition. I don't have a team. Well, I do have a team now that helps me out, but like I'm not lining up these things. Half my friends were like, "Where's my non-technical co-founder? Where's my sales guy? What VCs do I know? Let's go to New York City Tech Week." It's like none of that has to do with anything to doing your own thing. Yeah, it's been conflated and intellectualized as those are the things you need to do.
Love that. Just start and don't worry about anything else. They'll all fall into place after. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Nick. And if people want to connect with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I've got about 175,000 followers and I share daily career tips and data tips there. I'm also pretty big on Twitter. Again, Nick Singh Tech, about 30,000 followers on there. Check out DataLemur. That's where I have all my content about interview stuff. And check out the book. It's the #1 bestseller on Amazon. Just go read the book and you'll see my email and everything in there. But yeah, those are the main ways to get to me. And almost every tip I have has been out there floated on social media or in the book or on DataLemur. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. See ya.